In this video, we are going to take a look at the CSS Flexbox layout, which is the final topic that we're going to cover in today's lesson to do with responsive design for the website. So let's get started here. All right, so before we get into the Flexbox layout module, let's talk a bit about the history. What was there before we had Flex? So Flex came into the picture quite recently, in the recent years. Before the Flex layout module, we had different ways of arranging layout on web pages, and we did learn the other ways. For example, we learned block sections, inline sections, and also using float properties. So let's take a look. Just going to get my pointer here. All right, so first we're familiar with the block for sections in the web page. So each block would be something like the header is a block, the section is a block, the footer is a block. So each of these are blocks, right? We use blocks to do the layout on our web pages. Okay, so that's something we're familiar with. Next we have the inline. So inline is when everything is on one line. For example, text would be inline, right? Next is a table. So a long time ago, web designers had to use tables to arrange things on the web page. This is no longer done. We never use tables anymore to deal with the layout of the web page, but rather tables are used for two-dimensional table data. For example, if you have some data that you want to display, like weather information or maybe some scientific data, things like that, you would display that in a table format. Next, we also use positioning for explicit position of an element. So we learned previously how to use positioning values to kind of make sure that certain elements are in certain spots on the web page. Okay, so now we're looking at the flexible box layout module. This makes it easier, the Flex module makes it easier to design flexible, responsive layout without using float properties or positioning properties. So let's take a look at the Flex property. Okay, so in your CSS, you would, well, first of all, in your HTML, you would have a class called Flex Container, or you can name it whatever you like, really, but I like to use something that's descriptive, so I like to call it Flex Container. Okay, and then in the CSS, Flex Container, the CSS rule would be display flex. So that's the property and value. So what display flex does is that it makes the flex container, whatever this class is applied to, makes that container become flexible by setting the display property to flex. Okay, and then next we're going to set the flex direction to row. It defines which direction the container wants to stack these flex items, and then you have the background color Misty Rose. So let's go take a look at this in action so that we can see a real life example. Now I have attached these files in Web Campus. I've uploaded these files in Web Campus for you so you can kind of take a look along with me. So there's quite a few. There's Flex, FlexWrap, and index.html. So let's take a look at index.html first. So in index.html, you'll see that you have the main div, okay, of Flex Container. And then inside you have one block here called Flex Item Left and the other one called Flex Item Right. And when I go view it, okay, in Packages, View in Browser, when I go view it, it looks like this, okay? So ignore that media query just now. So when you open it up, it will look like this. So what's happening here? So these two, Flex Item Left is the gray one and Flex Item Right is the pink one here. They're both inside of something called Flex Container. So they must be inside of something even though you can't see that something right now, right? So if I go here, you can't see that parent container that it's in, but it exists. There's something, an invisible box holding one, and the gray one and then the pink one, all right? So, and that one, that Flex Container has to have the style, Flex Container has to have display flex, okay? So the parent container is what has to have display flex, and then the flex direction is row. And Flex Item Left has a flex of 50%, and then flex item right as a flex of 50%. So it's going to take up 50% of that space there, as you can see. So let's go take a look. See, it takes up 50% and 50%. All right. And when I make it smaller, it still holds 50% and 50%. All right. So you can also change that into flex columns. So display flex still for the flex container, the parent container. When it comes to flex direction, though, you can change that to column. Okay, so when you change that to column, file, save all. Let's go see what happens. Change that to column. It becomes stacked one on top of each other instead of one beside each other. Okay, so that becomes useful when you're trying to do responsive design. So I'm going to go back and change it back to row. Okay. All right, so at the very bottom, I have here a media query. If it's less than 800 pixels, I want it to, the flex direction to be column. So normally I want it to look like this in a row. Okay. I should save it first. File, save all. Okay, so when it's bigger than 800 pixels, when the screen size is bigger than 800 pixels, I want the flex direction to be row. So it will look like this in a row. But when it's smaller than 800 pixels, I want it to suddenly stack like that. Right? So that's one easy way to write your media query to move things around. How much nicer is that, right? So when each of these containers, the gray one and the pink one, is getting too small to make sense, I'm going to make it stack. So now they have room again. All right? So that's how you can use media query with Flex. So I'm just going to let you take some time to wrap your head around that. And I would like you to perhaps do this exercise, but do it on your own. Start a new page and then try and recreate this page. Okay, and then you can practice using the flex display flex property to understand it. So play around with display flex and then flex direction row and flex direction column. You can also practice doing the media query.